Lead together, embrace change, enhance everyone's journey. The 3 core principles of SmartStop, a leader in self-storage real estate across North America. Reinforce why we're proud to bring you SheEO Lead-In, the podcast featuring curated conversations with powerful women sharing their impactful wisdom. It's a self-knowledge, self-discovery, and self-preneurship audio storage vault created by and for women. SmartStop's presentation of SheEO Lead-In begins right now.
So today we're here with Liz Bui, the CEO of YULEX.
That's right.
So how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to hear your story. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
So I am the CEO of YULEX. YULEX is a material science company. Mm-hmm. And really at our core, we replace natural rubber products for equivalent for their counterpart, petroleum-based products. So a good example of that, for example, is our first consumer product, which is called YULEX foam. And it's a natural rubber closed-cell foam, and it replaces neoprene. So really briefly, neoprene is a petroleum-based foam.
Interesting.
And so I think our whole mission is really to replace petroleum-based products where we can with, something that Mother Nature made, which is natural rubber.
Which is great because we all want that.
I think so.
Yes.
I think at our core, we all want better products for the planet and for ourselves. I think it's just, after decades, and DuPont's a really great company, actually. They invented a lot of cool stuff. As a patent attorney, I can actually appreciate a lot of the inventions. But we've come I think it's become normalized, plastics, and our use of it in the world. And now that there's, of course, a surfacing of understanding of the appreciation of the fact that these plastics last forever. And they're
not good for us.
And they're not good for us.
Yeah.
And they're everywhere, right?
Yeah.
They're in our food.
Yeah.
They're in our clothing. They're in our water. They're in our brain. They're in our organs. They're in our blood cells. I mean, so it's like so I think at least that acknowledgement is pushing that conversation. But we've been at it for a long time. Meaning that, this has been our focus for some time. And so it's not, we're not trending in the sense that this is what we've always, at our core, have always been.
So how many products do you have that are out and about actually being sold?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we basically started out with raw materials, where we sold deforestation-free and certified natural rubber raw materials. And so obviously there's no domestic, at this point, crop of natural rubber. So all our natural rubber source that we work with is in Southeast Asia. And so our partners happen to be like in Latin America, Southeast Asia, Sri Lanka, where the raw materials are. And we really have 2 products. We have a YULEX closed-cell foam, which is the neoprene replacement. Right. And we have what we call now YULASTIC, which is a spandex replacement. And so both neoprene and spandex are originally invented and innovated by DuPont. And both, of course, you and I both probably have something on right now that has spandex in it, right?
Yes.
I mean, so 80% of all textiles and articles that we wear have spandex in it. But spandex is not recyclable. It's not biodegradable. And even in a piece of article of clothing, even if you do recycle, for the most part, you're recycling like the other textiles, the polyester or the nylon or the other bio-based or synthetic material. You're not recycling the spandex. So that spandex just really ends up in the landfill where it will never biodegrade.
So I'm super excited to have this conversation because I find it fascinating. So can you tell me, for instance, a pair of pantyhose? I'm assuming you would be able to use it for that. How long would it take for the natural fibers to degrade and then versus the man-made ones?
Okay, so there are no natural fibers in pantyhose.
Right.
So everything is petroleum-based.
Yes.
And so it would probably... some of it, well, because of the pantyhose and because it's thin. So, I mean, many things, biodegradation depends on a number of different things, right? How much surface area, what the temperature is, what the bacterium and what sort of the microenvironment is, for that biodegradation to occur. But in a typical landfill, you don't have that. Basically, you have, an anaerobic without oxygen,
Right.
you know, because you're pressing things. You're just continually. So even a piece of newspaper, for example, would not biodegrade in such a scenario. You could probably dig it up in a couple of decades and you'd probably still be able to read it because you're not providing the environment in which it can biodegrade. Right. So biodegradation, like if you go, for example, to a facility where they have, you know, a compost facility, for example, you're moving, right? There's bacterium, then there's things that break up and basically degrade or, you know, are enzymatic and break up including textiles, but they break up other things as well. But you're basically, it's also warmer and you're also churning that over.
When do you think we're going to get to that point where we can use that for textiles?
I think we're already there because actually Elastic, our elastic is actually biodegradable. And so we did an ASTM test, you know, for biodegradation. And over a period of 90 days, it degraded about 33%. And so with Elastic, I think we designed it initially for that purpose because we understood that in reality, recycling is really not the answer.
Right.
Because, you know, I mean, very few things actually get recycled.
Right.
Because, as you know, in San Diego, even now, we don't even recycle. We used to be able to separate our, right? And so I live part of the year in Seattle, and they do a really good job up there with regards to recycling, and they have local recycling centers.
So California's got it wrong?
Duh.
Just kidding.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, everyone thinks that we're like, you know, so green, but in fact,
we're virtue signalers. Yeah, we don't actually do it.
We don't recycle.
We pretend like we do.
I mean, it was really hard actually returning back to California, and I had all these things that you know I was automatically separating because having lived in Seattle, I was kind of trained to know exactly what was recyclable and what was not that the local facilities would take, and it was just like it's all blended, you know, and it just feels. It feels shameful, you know? And so I'm really, you know, and just, I mean, I always have been really conscientious of like, you know, when I go someplace, you know, I don't take a plastic bag if I don't need one. I'll just put it in my purse or I'll carry it to the car, you know, or for example, if you go to Starbucks, you know, if they accept my tumbler, I'll use it, or I'll never get basically those little paper carry ones, right? Because those are one use.
I know.
Right? Even if they're recyclable and even are compostable, they're really one use. You're taking them basically from Starbucks into your car to your residence or to your work, and that's it.
Yeah.
No one ever reuses that.
Yeah.
But it's such a waste.
During the pandemic, well, before the pandemic, I was really good at bringing my own mug, no problem. And then when the pandemic came, I went, wait, you're not going to use my cup?
Right.
Shoot. And now I'm out of, you know, I'm not doing it anymore just because I'm out of practice.
Right.
And so now I don't even know if they do it anymore.
Yeah.
But it was
some places,
great.
Right.
It was great when I could do that.
And so, you know, during the pandemic, the increase in plastic bag use went back up to 30%.
I know. Yeah. That doesn't surprise me.
And so we were doing so good. Even in Solana Beach, they had banned it. Sort of the one-use plastic bag in grocery stores and places like that. But then during the pandemic, you know, everything rolled backwards.
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
I actually am pretty good about my green waste. I only get brown bags at the grocery store, and then I throw all my food in there, all the things that are acceptable, and then I just throw it in my green.
Right. But the best thing is really just to use your recyclable bags.
Sure.
And anything works, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we all have huge nylon bags around somewhere. Yeah. And so, I mean, every time you go to a conference or a convention, right, part of that is swag. You get that little cloth bag. Yeah. I use those.
It's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy. And then when it gets schmucky, you just...
Right. And just think of every conference you go to, you get swag, right? And what is that swag? Most of that is just plastic.
Yeah.
Right? You don't really need it. I mean, how many, you know, thumb drives do you really need?
And squishy balls.
Or squishy balls, right.
Well, it depends how stressed out you are, I guess.
But even then, you know, it's a temporary sort of fleeting thing.
So what got you interested in all of this?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I really am dying to know.
Yeah, I actually, I married the founder.
Okay.
Yeah, so Jeff Martin founded YULEX Corp, and his initial founding of YULEX Corp was back in 2000, and was really to domesticate a natural rubber crop for the U.S. called guayule. And just so you know, natural rubber is actually seen as a critical raw material. And the U.S., I don't know if they still do it, but the U.S. government actually stockpiles natural rubber because it's deemed that critical.
Really?
All over and so, for example, airplanes land on 100% natural rubber because it's that durable.
Wow.
But that said, now, everybody all over the world is really dependent on natural rubber from Southeast Asia. And so
they need to do something to actually grow it elsewhere as well.
That's right. And so that's why that was his focus. And so his focus was really trying to domesticate a crop called YULE, which is a kind of a desert shrub, if you will. And it grows in the Southwest, and it grows, it's very water tolerant. And so right now, all the natural rubber comes from a plant species called Hevea. It's called the rubber tree, and the rubber tree grows in the tropics. Right. And there's something that's really, what happens a lot of in the tropics is it's hot and it gets a lot of water. And so that's one of the reasons why that Hevea doesn't grow anywhere else but in tropical climates, the Amazon at first and now Southeast Asia. And so other natural rubber crops are coming. YULE is one of them, Russian dandelion, but he spent basically almost 15 years domesticating that and then licensed that technology to an Italian company, ENI, and also Bridgestone is working on that. So Bridgestone and ENI together have said that they'll probably commercialize commercial YULE natural rubber around 2030. Potentially. So we'll see. So that would be exciting, to have sort of a domestic supply of natural rubber.
Can you use it in tires?
Yeah, of course.
Interesting.
And that's why Bridgestone is most interested,
yes,
right?
I would think,
They're not really interested, for their own consumption.
Right.
But yeah. And so, but after he licensed that technology, then he basically moved to the consumer industry, direct-to-consumer industry, and that's where the YULEX foam and the Ulastic comes from. And so I was in biotech.
And you're a patent attorney.
I am a patent attorney,
Right.
so I was IP legal counsel for a biotech company, and it was acquired for ViaCyte, which is a stem cell therapy company for type 1 diabetes. And, I was there for 15 years leading that effort, but we were acquired by a competitor, Vertex, in 2022. And so, I had left before, but during that acquisition is when I moved over to help Jeff sort of build the supply chain, develop different partners, and expand that in Southeast Asia.
It's fascinating.
It is, and it's been fun.
It really is fascinating, and that it's an emerging kind of a technology in a way.
It is a technology for sure. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's not tech in the sense of we think of here in San Diego. It's not biotech, but it could be. There's certainly a lot of textiles that are could potentially be biotech, for example, but it is definitely a material science. It's more textile engineering.
So you're going to then, when are they planning on bringing the forestation or?
Ulastic?
Yes.
And so right now we're actually in commercial development with a number of different partners. So we have yarn producers, we have fabric producers, we have denim, socks, and elastic producers. And we hope to launch with a number of the brands, I would hope, by the end of this year or early next year.
And no allergies? Are people
No, that's a very good question. Yeah. So Ulastic, as you had mentioned, actually is made from natural rubber latex. And historically, back in the 80s, during the time of AIDS epidemic, that was when people were really concerned about natural rubber latex allergies, because that's really when, for example, everybody started to wear gloves and natural rubber gloves, and many of the nurses and people in healthcare became sensitized to latex, and so that is a concern. But what we do with ours, with regards to production of Ulastic, is we make it from a purified natural rubber latex. So we take regular latex and we purify it to remove basically the non-rubber components, which is dirt, oil, but a lot of that also is removing of certain proteins alleged to be involved in type 1 latex allergies. And so, but that said, because of that purity, we're able to basically stretch and make a filament that's very fine, similar to spandex.
Oh, so less allergies, which everyone will love that, because how awful if you're allergic to latex and you need to get your blood drawn.
Right.
Literally everything they generally touch you with
is right. But that said, though, I mean, so for, you know, a lot of the products that we make, for example, even the YULEX foam. And so we've never had anyone basically complain with regards to allergies with regards to that. And a lot of it is the processing. And so along the processing to the foam, you have a lot of high heat. And high heat denatures the proteins. And so typically, so they're not recognized any longer by your body. And so when you denature them, you pretty much, you know, you break them down.
Right.
Or if they don't break down all the way, they don't look as what they did before. So, you know, your body doesn't recognize it as non-self. And so we've really never had a real issue with allergies with our products due to the processing, but also with Elastic because now we use YULEX Pure latex.
Very cool. I really do find this fascinating. I think there's a part of me that really loves science and new technology and new things and new ways of doing things. And especially because we're such an innovative country.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we have so many things, and really, especially in San Diego County, I think we have a lot of that kind of, well, I don't know. I feel like it's our whole state. Right. That is very innovative, and there are so many things that we can do to come up with solving problems and just, you know, again.
Well, I think that's really what California, you know, I mean, when people came out here, right, when they moved west, that was really for, you had a lot of innovators, right?
Sure.
A lot of people who sort of broke outside the box, did things different ways. And I think that's kind of the core, part of the California DNA. And it's also a little bit more merit-based. And so we don't have all the Ivy League colleges and the legacy of, you know, years of that. And so I think people come out here to sort of, to do just that, to innovate. And San Diego is very innovative, right? We have a huge biotech industry, pharma. And so it's, you know, some of the biggest, you know, sort of companies in biotech started here.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So how many employees do you have?
So we're actually a very small company. So when Jeff started with YULEX Corp and did with YULE, it was up to about 75 people. And then when he licensed that technology off and scaled down, we use now mostly experts because when you're basically a small company, it's really hard to hire and train because you just don't really have the ability to do that.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. So where are you getting any employees from?
That's a very good question because natural rubber is kind of a dying art.
Right.
And so that's one of the issues that we've always had is that even if you were wanting to hire, finding the right person with a natural rubber experience is actually really difficult.
I'm thinking you'd have to train them yourself.
Yes, but that's not easy to do either because training obviously is very consuming. And also when you think of a startup, you're thinking that everybody just is like you're right, everybody's working, you know.
For free.
Right, and really fast. And so there really isn't that much time. And you expect that everyone, when you hire experts, that everyone does what it is that they're supposed to be good at. And if they can't do it, they'll figure it out.
Right.
And so it would be hard. So we did actually hire a Vietnamese engineer. When we were, because we spent 2.5 years in Vietnam building out the supply chain, both in Thailand and in Vietnam. And he was a chemical engineer, but, and we, you know, let him take classes with regards to the American, I think the bio-rubber industry, they give typical classes. And it was over 9 weeks, but he never, it's hard. I think it's just not something you can learn by a book and then basically apply it. I think you really just need to learn it on the job.
Well, depending on how quickly you grow and your needs as far as employees, I almost feel like you should team up with, you're going to need to have an expert, obviously, but team up with some company that, or some educational institute that can help you help get your people up to speed. Yeah.
Well, we work
like a certificate program or something like that. I'm not really sure how it would work, but it just seems to me we've got a lot of education in San Diego County.
There is, I mean, so the seat of the natural rubber industry here in the U.S. is in Ohio. So Akron, Ohio. Goodyear.
Yeah.
So when you think of natural rubber in the U.S., you think of Goodyear. And that's basically sort of the seat of it. So there is the Akron Rubber Development Lab, ARDL, which is based in Akron. And so there is some natural rubber know-how concentrated in that area, but with regards to our innovations and applying that to sort of consumer development,
right?
Well,
let's take a quick pause for SmartStop so we can hear all about our amazing sponsor.
SmartStop knows the winning connection is when we elevate success together. SmartStop Self Storage, a California company with nearly 200 properties and over 15 million square feet of rentable storage in the US and Canada, is committed to positively impacting the communities we serve on the national and local level. By aligning our core principles of leading together, embracing change, and enhancing everyone's journey with local initiatives. To learn more about our core values, our locations, and career opportunities, please visit us at smartstopselfstorage.com.
Okay, so Akron, Ohio, maybe they'll do some sort of courses that are remote or something like that.
Yeah, and and maybe they have. I'm not sure that I've checked into it. So there is a new group called TARDIS, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the acronym and what it stands for, but it's basically funded by the National Science Foundation for $26 million with 6 academic groups and institutions, Ohio State being one of them, North Carolina State, Caltech, and a number of others. And the whole point being, again, is really to make progress with regards to a U.S.-based natural rubber crop.
Wow.
And so, I recently was named on the engineering advisory board of that. But again, so this whole need for our own supply of natural rubber, as opposed to our dependency from, on one source.
Right.
And most of that in Southeast Asia, it's,
well, it doesn't seem sustainable to me.
It's not sustainable.
Yeah, right.
And also you always want, basically, you want your primary source, but you always need secondary sources.
Sure.
And you also want to, as far as stability, if it's deemed a natural rubber is deemed a critical crop, or then.
Yeah, you definitely need to diversify and grow it, because if it is an emerging sort of technology in a way, you need to find out ways to make that happen.
Absolutely.
So I really do find this so fascinating. I can't even believe how exciting this is. So how are you going to find the next generation of people that are going to be involved in this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we went to visit North Carolina State back in September, right before the Climate Week in New York City. And they have an excellent program. They have a really good program, amazing sort of textile engineering program, everything from designers to engineers that work with, focus only on cotton. And then you have just different performing, sportswear performance brands like Under Armour and Hanes and, companies like that have sponsored certain aspects of the program out there. So I think, they have polymer chemists and they have polymer engineers, but I think they don't really teach natural rubber.
Right.
So they teach, because most of it, again, is because we're so used to synthetic rubber that I'm not even sure that the professors who teach classes have that knowledge. Right. So you can't, teach what you don't necessarily know or have experience doing. And so I think it would be great.
I feel like we're behind the 8 ball on this.
It does feel like we're behind the 8 ball. And it is, I would say that Jeff and I could probably count on one hand natural rubber experts that we could call on. And a lot of them have worked actually with Jeff. And so we use, for example, a Vietnamese engineer who used to work at YULEX in YULE.
Right.
And then he moved over to Thailand, for example, and started working, in the Thai industry with gloves and condoms there. Then our former chief technology officer is an engineer, but self-taught kind of rubber chemist, and he's great. And then you have, other people who know sort of the raw material, but they don't necessarily know the innovation or the material science of products made from the raw material.
You guys can pioneer
Right,
this.
right. So there are gaps, you
Right,
know, in
absolutely.
that. And so, yeah, so we just try to fill in the gaps with different people around the world that can give us a good assist.
So the next, just thinking about all of your experience, all of the things that you've done, what kind of advice would you give the next generation of young women that might want to be involved in this? Because it is technology, but
Right.
it's also science.
Correct.
And it's also, how are you even going to figure out how to grow it here and make it take off? Because
So those are all really good questions, and they're big. So I think domesticating a natural rubber crop is
yes, it just sounds
that's probably
fascinating.
the most difficult part,
Right,
actually.
right.
Because the scale, right? I mean, consider when's the last time you actually a crop was domesticated. It was
I have no idea.
It's canola.
Was it? Oh my gosh.
That's like, wow, maybe 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not that easy to domesticate a crop, right? There's a lot of scale-up issues. I mean, there's just a lot of technology that's required. And one of the things that, we still have, IP that we have is basically germplasm or seeds and of hybrids that we think are potentially better for producing higher yield latex. But it still has to be tested. It still has to be planted,
Yeah, that's going to take a while.
Right, that's going to, it's going to
And
take a while.
this is the thing that I think that California does not do well is we decide that we're going to switch to a technology, but it's not even well thought out, and we don't have the sustainability of it yet.
Right. Yeah, I think we're doing better, but I think it's so driven by investors. And investors still, I think, have this return on investment sort of scenario that is not in keeping with agronomy type of developments.
Right,
Because I think it takes so long. And that, and you really have to be in it. So that return
For the
on
long
right,
term.
Yeah, for the long term. So that
for sure.
ROI is not like the 5-year. It's not like what people think of in biotech. Right. And so it's a different timeline.
Well, there's a longer lag time, but I think, at the end, it could be even exponentially larger due to the fact that there is that lag time.
Right.
And, and then it'll jump and it'll happen pretty quickly, I think.
And I think it's, it's a great industry, but, so much of manufacturing has moved out of the U.S.
I know.
Right? I mean, we used to make a lot of clothes here.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, we used to make a lot of clothes, especially in the South, in Kentucky and North Carolina, but we don't anymore. And even mills that have a presence in the U.S., and, we'll work with them and they'll be like, oh, but our R&D is in China. And so it's like, so they have a presence in the U.S., but it's so small that any real development still has to occur offshore.
Well, isn't a lot of it actually made elsewhere and then brought here to be assembled? And that's how they're calling it made in the USA?
Yeah, there's some of that too.
Yeah.
Certainly there is some of that too. And so if you want to make, for instance, a small capsule, I think that's very feasible. For example, there's some really great talent out there doing some product development and making their own small brands. But, the Nikes, the Under Armour, those they don't have any presence. I mean, they don't even own their own assets. For one, they don't own manufacturing. But the manufacturing that they work and partner with is all in it's all abroad. It's not, you can't, for example, go to Beaverton.
Right.
And find people working in I mean, that's long gone.
Yeah. Well, you're going to have to come up with a plan of how you're going to get people educated to bring them on board, because it will be probably be a few years before you really take off.
Yeah, I think so. And we've really had to rely. So YULEX is a U.S.-based company.
Sure.
But our entire supply chains are not in the U.S.
Which means you have very little control.
Yes. And so that means we're working with partners in Thailand, in Taiwan, in Vietnam, in Pakistan, in Sri Lanka, and India, and the supply chains are really difficult, because you're basically depending and working and collaborating with partners to help you commercialize your product. So a really deep understanding of their business is obviously going to only, to be helpful for you to align with them. Sure. And so we spend a lot of our time on the road, meeting these partners, in their business, getting to know them, trying to understand their constraints, and how, we can best work with them. And so sometimes we don't like the answers, but but I think it's one of these things where you really have to meet them in person. It's very hard to develop a resilient supply chain sitting remote.
So someone has an idea in their mind, like yours. What would your suggestions be? How would you inspire them to follow what they want to do and come? I mean, this is, to me, I find this so fascinating because this is way outside of my wheelhouse because it's an emerging, again, technology and also, supply, if it were to be, grown here. But how are you? But it's like new old or old new. It's old, but it's new because we're moving more toward that, which is funny to me. Even just saying it out loud sounds so funny. But how would you even inspire someone to get involved?
In textiles or just in...
In textiles, but also in the rubber technology. In coming up with ideas and how to innovate in that.
Right. So I think actually it's a great opportunity because there is sort of kind of a gap in a lot of know-how and expertise in that. And so I would say that any student really interested in polymer chemistry, and particularly rubber polymer chemistry, really figure out sort of how to, because we are moving. I mean, there is much more of a sustainability awareness, if you will, right?
Well, we talk the talk, now we have to walk the walk, exactly. And this is a way to make that happen.
And this is a way to do it, and to really dive in there. And in the age of AI, I mean, knowledge is really...
What does AI say about this?
Well, knowledge is so accessible.
Yeah. Sure, it is, yeah.
I mean, because AI can only just obtain the information from what's already publicly available.
Right.
And so if you think about all the publications, all the scientific publications that are publicly available, and so you can slowly learn and digest. And I think there would be a great opportunity actually for a lot of entrepreneurs, in this space, if they actually went back and learned some of sort of the more bio-based, more nature based, as opposed to sort of some of the chemistry that we all learned.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because there's a lot of products that, for example, if you ask Jeff, he's really the visionary behind this, that he would love to do if we had more resources and more capital and, more expertise in the area. But
you're going to have to make the expertise, I think.
Yes,
I think you're going to have to figure out how to grow that. I think that's a big part of your business model or plan, I guess, that has to happen because you can't grow without the bodies that can actually do the work. Okay, so what's next for you? Let's look out 5 years. What do you foresee? Let's not even go that far. Let's go 2 years. What does that look
Well, I would love to partner basically our foam business such that we could help somebody help us scale it. Because I think what Jeff and I are really good at is we're good at the innovation. We're good at the intellectual property.
Right.
We're good at building and collaborating and building supply chains and sort of that aspect of it. But we're not necessarily good or equipped at sort of the scale, how to make it bigger, faster, more efficient. So that includes sales, that includes marketing.
Right.
And so a partner that can help us build that would be phenomenal.
You need a lot.
Yes.
And because you've got the ideas and it's how are you going to be able to get that
right
out there?
Yeah, I mean, we've done quite a lot with just the small group that we have.
Sure.
So we have a general manager of textiles based in the UK who's spent like almost 35 years in denim and textiles. And so he's been great because of his know-how. But again, it's just that know-how, and it's more than the know-how, it's also the contacts, it's all the network, right? Because when you get an expert, you also buy into the network of their network.
Sure.
Right. And that's really the difference between using an expert sometimes and using someone who's, fresh out of college.
Right. Yeah.
And so, and when you're trying to basically do a startup, you need all those networks. because one leads, to another. In other words, your yarn producer may all of a sudden, I sell a lot of, basically spandex yarns to so-and-so. So then we work with, and then it just goes on and on and on.
Right.
And so I think that would, and so that's kind of what we need as well, just people to manage that. But also at the base of it, we really need the help scaling up.
Yeah, definitely. This has been such a fabulous, mind-bending sort of situation because, again, most of the people that are actually on our show are talking about things, careers that are everyday sort of careers. This is really groundbreaking. I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's different than like medical science because it's,
well, it's a little more accessible.
I don't,
right?
I think it is.
Yeah. I mean, because I used to work for 15 years for Viasite, and what we did was we were developing a cell therapy for type 1 diabetes. Right. And so I can get into the nitty-gritty of differentiating into pancreatic progenitors and probably lose you, right? But when we talk about textiles, everybody wears clothes.
Yeah, everyone needs it. Yes.
Right. I mean, that's just
part of our everyday life.
Right. And you understand that terminology, you understand that language, and you understand it. Also, what's important is you understand its life cycle. Right. Because even if you don't understand all the materials that go into its production or whether or not it's bio-based or whether or not it harms the planet, you are a consumer that knows exactly what you like, what color you want, how you want to feel when you're wearing it, whether or not it's, stretchy, whether or not you don't need the stretch, whether or not it's durable, you like those jeans, you don't like those jeans, etc. But then you also know the end life, which is it didn't fit as well as you thought it did.
Right.
So you're giving it to somebody else, or basically it sits in your closet, or you're donating it. And the likelihood is if you donate it, at some point it doesn't really get donated per se, it ends up in a landfill.
Right.
And so,
and then what?
Right.
And then
so the
what?
life cycle of a textile article is much more accessible to the average person than, say, biotech or drug development.
And if we're talking about sustainability and all of that, we have to look at all aspects of that. Not just our food, not just our plastics, which isn't really happening. Not just the cardboard, but it's everything.
It's everything. And what's nice, I think, in sort of the textile industry is that we all can do something.
That's right.
Because we all consume.
Yes.
Right. We all buy clothes. Right. We all like nice, and sometimes we like new things, right? Christmas is coming, and basically, consumer index goes, right? I mean, it just is, right. But so we can all take a part, but if we can do it a little bit more meaningful, think about what we're purchasing. And, maybe it's better to buy, for example, to pay more and buy a better article and have it last. And then have it also, as far as design, be able to break down or be able to be easily recycled, right? So a lot of our textiles, for example, contain so many blended materials that it's really hard to, because in order for something to be recycled, you have to basically break everything down to its singular part that it was before you blended it to make the article. And so it's like reverse engineering. You're taking it apart to recycle it. And so the more things that you blend together, the harder it becomes to break it apart.
Right. So do you have a website?
We do, yulex.com.
What is it? Okay. How do you spell that again?
YULEX.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of
Very
course.
fascinating discussion.
The incredible curated SheEO conversation you just enjoyed was brought to you by SmartStop, a leader in self-storage real estate and a company that upholds its core principles of leading together, embracing change, and enhancing everyone's journey. To learn more about SmartStop, please visit smartstopselfstorage.com.
Cloudcast Media.